This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. We also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 10th of February 2021, and I am Miss K.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, New World for Children in CBC Plan. In the Standard, how exams will radically change. And in the Star, RUTO, Munya in major clash over central politics. But forget the headlines. Today, I will talk about the three deadly sins of William RUTO. The first is the sin of greed. From when they entered State House in March 2013, RUTO has been salivating on Uhuru's job indecently. This greed for ultimate power is not the same as ambition. Ambition is a drive to serve, but greed is an urgent appetite for power. And why it will destroy William RUTO is because greed is a bottomless pit. In fact, it is a fat demon with a small mouth. Whatever you feed it is never enough. If you feed William RUTO with the presidency, he will want to become God. The second sin of William RUTO is the sin of deceit. Now, in politics, there's nothing wrong with deception. However, it becomes a sin if you get caught. William RUTO has used deception to foment rebellion against Uhuru Kenyatta in Gema. He has borrowed from the cookbook of lies that states, if you want to deceive effectively, play the victim. And RUTO played the victim to the Kikuyus. He did this because a thief does not steal from an unfamiliar place. RUTO was familiar with the Kikuyus, and he knew that if he played victim, they would believe him. The problem, however, is that the lie is beginning to wear out, and very soon RUTO will get caught. The third sin of William RUTO is the sin of restlessness. Now, if you combine greed with restlessness, you have the twin killers of healthy ambition. And this is so because restlessness makes even the brightest of men to do foolish things. And we are persuaded here at the Fifth Estate that the sin of restlessness has led William RUTO to do politically foolish things. More so because the presidency was already his in 2022.
Whoa.
Ama namna gani?
It was his to lose.
See, it was precisely.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Now, Sun Tzu tells us that all warfare is based on deception. And William RUTO knows this. On Monday, he paraded 38 MPs, 7 senators, his cooks, drivers, shamba boys, and butlers. And he told us that 136 MPs had gone to visit him at Government House in Karen. His audience was not you or me. His audience was President Uhuru Kenyatta. Why, you may ask? RUTO has sensed that his boss is about to crack the whip. He has sensed that impeachment is nay. And if impeachment is nay, RUTO must show up his numbers in Parliament as a way to stop his impeachment. Question is, can he stop his impeachment? Does he have the numbers to stop his impeachment? Let's assume that RUTO did actually have 136 MPs at current. 136 MPs is 20 MPs more required to stop his impeachment. RUTO constitutionally needs 116 MPs to stop his impeachment. If RUTO's intention is to show us that only 20 MPs stand between him and his impeachment, his methods are laughable. And we say this because 20 MPs is such a small threshold. What would happen if, for instance, those 20 MPs caught COVID on the day of the vote, or simply disappeared on the day of the vote? All right. We want to remind RUTO of an impeachment motion he allegedly sponsored in June 2014 on then CS Planning and Waiguru. On the day of the vote, the mover of the motion, Senator Mithika Linturi, found himself in Naivasha enjoying life. These are not our words, but those of RUTO's former Chief of Staff, Marianne Kaitani. Of course, Waiguru's impeachment motion collapsed. We have a message for William Ruto. If Linturi went for holiday in Naivasha on the day of the vote, who's to say 20 MPs won't find their way to the Mara, or Diani, or Zanzibar, or even Lodwar during Ruto's impeachment? If 20 members is all it takes to have Ruto impeached, the state will have its way. Whether it's 20, 40, 60 MPs, the state will have its way. Ruto should employ a change of tact. Instead of hosting consultative meetings in Karen, he should switch to hosting farewell parties.
Words there.
That'd be more apt.
I will take us back to the headlines.
Yes.
In fact, two headlines in the Daily Nation and the Standard talked about education, and specifically they talked about the launch of the curriculum-based, competency-based curriculum, the task force report. It was released yesterday and it was sanctioned by the president. And I'm not going to talk about what the papers say. You can read that for yourself for the report. I'd like to call attention to the president's speech at that launch. The president stated, and rightly so, that we are at a tipping point in our education system. And the summons of our time require us to reimagine how we have educated our children. He then outlined the challenges that our young people face and the competencies that they must build if they are to be suitably educated for the future. I would like to summarize that part of his speech because as a parent myself, it both challenged and inspired me. And he said that to the challenge of rapid technological growth, our education system must respond with digital literacy. To the challenge of resiliency in confronting unprecedented crises such as COVID-19, our education system must respond by teaching our children the skills of critical thinking and problem solving. To the challenge of becoming globally competitive, our education system must respond by giving our children skills that are value-based and strong in furthering their knowledge base. To the challenge of harnessing the bounty of the possibilities in our country, our education system must respond by training our children to be imaginative and creative. To the challenge of low civic competence, our education system must respond by training our children to understand their responsibilities to fellow Kenyans, their duties to our country, Kenya, and the rights that they derive from exercising these obligations. The president then said, and I personally felt moved by these words, that in a world that teaches our children that they are not good enough, our education system must teach our children to believe that they have a purpose. And this purpose is called self-efficacy, or the belief in self. And that's all under our competence-based curriculum. And finally, to the challenge of rigid production systems that produce workers. Our education system must respond by introducing what is called learning to learn. And learning to learn is very simple. It's to allow our children to explore, to innovate, to unshackle our minds from the old and rigid molds of learning. And he ended by saying, this way, that's once the competence-based curriculum has been put in and has readied our children for the challenges of our time, our children will be able to exploit their imagination, their creativity, solve problems, use critical thinking, have digital literacy, and be civically responsible citizens. I have nothing to add to those words of the president.
Wonderful. That was a brilliant speech that he gave. I think one of the best, one of the finest in regard to education. Now, we've got a three-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines: topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful or just plain lazy. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Should we give it to the politically inclined star?
I think so. Can we just throw all of them?
We throw all of them?
Yes.
Sour. Okay. And on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. We've got a three-part criteria that we use to assess the cartoons. Are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, and effective or just plain lazy? What have we got on the Daily Nation?
Daily Nation, we have a caricature of President Uhuru Kenyatta standing at the door. Behind him, we have caricatures of Raphael Tuju and Murathe closing, or rather attempting to close the JP door on various people who've been purged. In a wheelbarrow, pushed by a caricature of Deputy President William Ruto, is Sonko, Murkomen, Sudi, Millicent Omanga, Alice Wahome, Moses Kuria et al. In fact, the wheelbarrow is so full that the Deputy President president is saying in his thoughts, this calls for a bigger wheelbarrow.
Yes. It's a comical one. That one is humorous. I like it. I think we'll put that in the parking bay as we consider what's in the Standard. Here we have a caricature of President Pombe Magufuli seated on a throne, on a dais, with members of the CCM lining up to throw their brains in the trash and then thank Magufuli as they walk away. Oh, I love it. This is very, very satirical.
Yes.
A touch of pessimism here. But maybe this is what the country of Tanzania needs at this point in time.
Yeah.
They need people who do instead of people who think.
Yeah.
Doers, not thinkers. You know, there's a phase, there's a season in every country in life.
That's comical.
Yeah, comical. I say we put that in the parking bay as well.
Absolutely. The one I love, the Star caricature of Jubilee Party Secretary General Raphael Tuju whipping the rebels. And next, the people who are being whipped is Isaac Mora, Millicent Omanga, goodness Lord, and you have very worried Irongo Kangata is about to join the rebels that are being whipped, and not too far away from them is other ones who are bending in order to get whipped proper.
I think that I do not like this cartoon because for me it feels a little sexist. Why is the whip particularly touching Millicent Omanga's derriere?
There's something odd here about how they've done this rendition, because it's supposed to be, I suppose, a classroom style. Maybe they're supposed to be like slaves on the field, but they look like they're in a club. The way Omanga has been drawn here, it's like she's in a club and Tuju has a whip out.
I would say toss it.
He's gleefully.
He's too gleeful. It's off.
I mean, what are the chances where the whip will end?
Stop it. It's off.
Anyway,
toss it.
So, lady and gent, whom do we award the winning cartoon?
The Star.
Nation.
And I say Standard. So we have no winning cartoon.
So all of them out.
Or we all have respective winning cartoons. And now, on to our final thought. But before we get there, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And so, what is our final thought?
And now our final thought, it is inspired by a book entitled The Mathematics of Love, Patterns, Proofs, and the Search for the Ultimate Equation by Hannah Fry.
In this book, Hannah Fry, a mathematician, takes us through the odds of finding your soulmate, to how game theory reveals the best strategy to pick up a stranger in a bar, to the equation that explains how conversation patterns show lasting relationships. She writes in the introduction that mathematics is ultimately the study of patterns, and love, like most of life, is full of patterns. So from the number of sexual partners you have in your lifetime, to how you choose who to message on an internet dating website. These patterns twist and turn and warp and evolve just as love does. And all patterns which are mathematical, and these are patterns which mathematics is uniquely placed to describe.
Yes.
So using math, science, and some interesting examples, Hannah gives us what she calls her top 3 mathematically verified tips for love. Tip number 1 deals with how to win at online dating. Tip number 2 deals with how to pick the perfect partner, and I think JM will elaborate on that.
Yes.
And tip number 3 deals with how to avoid divorce. Now, because I have a partner, I think I'll deal with tip number 3. Here, Hannah cites the work of a psychologist called John Gottman, who studied marriages and why they succeed or they fail. And he spent decades observing how couples interact and coding and measuring everything from their skin conductivity to their facial expressions. And he found out that the most important predictor of whether or not a couple is going to get divorced was how positive or negative each partner was being in the conversation. So Gottman used this to develop what he called the specific affect coding system, simply a method of how positive or negative a couple's exchanges were. And couples with a low risk of divorce got a higher result on Gottman's scale, while couples with a high risk of divorce spiraled into what they called negativity.
That's right.
So Gottman teamed up with a mathematician and came up with an equation to predict how the husband or wife were going to respond. And the equation was based on 3 things. 1, the mood of the person, so either the husband or wife when they were alone, the mood when they were together, so when the partners were together, and how the partners influenced each other. versa. So how the husband influenced the wife or the wife influenced the husband. So the most important part of the equation was the influence that the couples had on each other. Specifically, what he called the negativity threshold, or how annoying my husband had to be before I got really pissed off at him, and vice versa. So how annoying I had to be before my husband got really pissed off at me.
Yeah.
So the most interesting thing is that the best couples, the couples who are going to stay together, had a really low negativity threshold. That means I didn't take any nonsense from my husband. I didn't let anything go unnoticed. And in fact, I was trying to continually fix my relationship. If he annoyed me, I got mad really fast and I told him about it immediately and we sorted it out. In short, what she tells us is that there is mathematical evidence for the biblical principle not to let the sun go down on your anger.
Wow, wow, wow.
Goodness,
Wonderful.
goodness. Now, if you don't think you're good looking, this is how you make yourself look better. And this is called the decoy effect. All right. Now, here's what he says you should do. When someone decides to approach you in a bar or to accept your advances at a party, they're not judging your beauty against every other face in the world. Nobody minds that you don't look like George Clooney or Heidi Klum. They are making a decision based on the options available to them at the time. And this is perhaps where there is room to use math to your advantage. Think of it as a salesman, yeah? Imagine you are in a cinema and choosing which snacks to buy. Perhaps a small popcorn costs about 250 shillings. Well, a large popcorn is an eye-watering 320 shillings. The large option seems terribly expensive until the cashier points out that the large popcorn is only 70 shillings more than the small one. No sensible person would ever choose to buy the small popcorn when you could have the large for only a few shillings more. But the fact that the small popcorn is on the menu has a big impact on your decision. It serves to make the large popcorn look like a much better deal. This is known as economics as a this is known in economics as a decoy effect. What's our point here? When going to a party to talk to potential partners, choose a friend to go with you who is as similar looking to you as possible, except slightly less attractive. Having them there will make you seem a little like a better option. And I'm sure you see this everywhere.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, pretty ladies never work with equally pretty ladies.
That's right.
They downgrade their company so as to maintain their status quo.
Now I've understood why.
It's brutal, but it works. After all, George Bernard Shaw put it, love consists of overestimating the difference between one woman and another. So don't be shy to use a decoy effect to your advantage.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Wow.
Are you telling me that the reason I'm married is because I walked around with slightly less attractive friends?
Chances are, yes.
Or I was a slightly less attractive friend, depending on which angle you look at it.
No, if you're chosen, it's because you're the best, but your friends don't match up.
Let me talk about how mathematics can help you determine when to get married, when to settle down, and whom you should reject before you decide to specialize. And I'll also talk about how it can help you at the stage of planning your wedding. So very quickly, the first, according to math, is known as the optimal stopping theory. And it works as follows. If you're destined to date, let's say 10 people over your lifetime, before you get married, the formula dictates that you have the highest chance of finding the one. This is a perfect one for you if you reject your first 4 partners. So you've got to reject the first 4, and then after that, your next one becomes ideally the best that you will ever get. And from that next one, the 5th one, if you reject the 5th, what this equation says is that you will just keep going down in terms of the quality of spouse that you are compatible with.
Possibly likely to find.
Absolutely. And so if more partners are on the card, let's say you're destined to date about 20 people, you reject the first 8 and so on. So those first 4 or the first 8 is about, I think about 40% or thereabouts. Now, number 2, mathematics can also help you optimize your wedding planning. And this is in particular the case for when you're preparing the guest list. Yeah. So she has a brilliant matrix here, which she describes, and I'll explain it to you step by step, very briefly. So first is to list all the potential invitees who are grouped as couples or families, and you can enter their names into a spreadsheet, right? With the name of the group in the first column and the number of people the group contains in the second column. So you've got 2 columns so far. Next, you decide how likely it is that each group will show up if they were invited. For example, your best friend from home is perhaps 95% likely to attend. So they and their group would collectively get a score of 0.95. You enter that score into the third column of your spreadsheet. Then you multiply the second column, that is the number of people in each group, by the score in the third column. So let's say you have 2 people in column 2 and 0.95, you multiply that. And this will give you a number for a fourth column containing the expected number of people who will accept the invitation. And then finally, she says, as you work your way down the list, keep a running total of the expected number of guests in a fifth column. And this, I suppose, she says in the context of rounding up some of those numbers, because you'll get 1.95 and so on and so forth.
Right.
And with that system, you will on average invite the right number of people to your wedding, she says, thus alleviating one of the biggest headaches of wedding planning, the guest list. And you prioritize it in terms of who's most likely to attend and who's not.
I wish I had this when I was planning my wedding.
I tell you, right? So, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, today we had no winning headline, but we had 3 winning cartoons. They all made us laugh a great deal. Now, I'd like to leave you with some advice, and this is in particular for men. And the advice here is in the area of risk, from a name by a guy by the name H.L. Mencken, the 19th century American journalist. And he said, women do not like timid men. In the same way that cats do not like prudent mice. No guts, no glory. So be gutsy, but remember, even as you do courageous things, do not be like some people about town whom we've spoken about earlier, some people who live in Karen, who have the heart of a lion but the brain of an ox. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on Pang Free to Air, Go TV and Star Times. Have a good evening.
God bless.